The purpose of our project is to use augmented reality to illustrate the strategic importance of Fort Meigs, create a feeling of connectedness between the user and the 6th Connecticut Regiment, and bring the user back in time to 1778 in order to enhance the historical learning experience of the app's users at West Point. Our problem statement: in its present state, Fort Meigs does not resemble the way it appeared when it was used in the defense of Fort Arnold and the Great Chain during the Revolutionary War. As a result, it is impossible for site visitors to understand why the fort was constructed and its significant importance at West Point. Our solution: by utilizing the tools of augmented reality, we will create an app that uses 3D models paired with music, verbal, and written history in order to immerse the user and make them feel as though it was 1778 and demonstrate visually the strategic importance of Fort Meigs.
Our sprint goal for sprint 2 is that we guide the user through the most important aspects of Fort Meigs. We effectively communicate a preliminary design idea for next semester. As a group, we develop a concrete vision of what each member will be responsible for.
Our first functional requirement is to illustrate the strategic importance of Fort Meigs. The most important aspect of this is defense in depth. In order to understand properly the defense in depth, we must be able to show the location of Fort Arnold, the location of the Great Chain, avenues of approach that the British might have taken to attack Fort Arnold and the Great Chain, and the overview of the entire system of forts with West Point and Fort Meigs' role within that system. Our second functional requirement is to enhance the user's learning experience. We're going to do this by creating a feeling of connectedness to Colonel Meigs. Colonel Meigs was well respected by his soldiers, always advocated for them, and was known as a great leader. We also need to create a feeling of connectedness to the soldiers themselves by explaining how poor their living conditions were and how poorly supplied they were. It is also unique to the 6th Connecticut Regiment that they had African American soldiers among their ranks. Sharing their stories will help us build that feeling of connectedness that will enhance the user's learning experience. Lastly, we must bring the user back to 1778 and show them things that weren't there that are not there currently. Some of these things include the wooden wall that would have been present, a musket, and a cannon.
Our scope for this sprint was 105 hours. However, we estimated between all of our backlog items that it would take us 121 hours. As of now, we have completed 106.5 hours, giving us a total scope of 1.014. These are our current sprint backlog items for sprint 3 and sprint 4, as well as sprint 4 and sprint 5. Here are our completed items for this sprint, which include creating the Trello board and making papers. Continued. Here are some of the items. We stopped working on getting the cannon to fire to focus on more design elements, as well as ordering the wood asset. Here's our burn down chart. Again, this is incorporating the 121 hours, so we have actually completed this. This is counting the 9 hours in that 121 hours.
In sprint, we acquired app-relevant music from the West Point Band. The tracks include bugles, drum lines, horns, fiddles, and fifes, and vary from basic marching tunes to more complex orchestral arrangements. It is appropriate both for the military setting and the colonial era, and is intended to enhance user experience at the site. The music has been edited to shorter audio clips and is ready to be incorporated into the app, whether as background music or in short interface transitions.
This sprint, I began looking into the design for closed captioning and how we want to implement it into our app. The basic design is to have some form of closed captioning button on the screen, probably in the bottom right-hand corner. The user can toggle this button on and off to turn captioning on or off. The captioning itself will be positioned at the bottom of the screen on both iPhone and iPad. The hardest aspect of the captioning is to make sure that the words are visible on the screen. This will be done by making the text big enough, somewhere around 15-point font for iPhone and 18-point for iPad, as well as putting a gray transparent box outlined in black to help create some contrast, while not being too distracting to the user. Additionally, outsourcing the wooden walls was put on hold after the last sprint, but I am prepared to finalize that order. There are just a couple things still needed from the group, such as measurements of the fort, but the outsourcing should be done before Christmas leave.
For the historical aspect, the progress I've made, I've completed a historical content draft and submitted it to Lieutenant Colonel Scully. I need to refine this historical content draft into the narrative that will be used for the app.
This is the possible printout that we will use at the site. If we cannot coordinate with the museum in order to get our QR codes onto their pre-planned signage, we will use these printouts in order to display our QR codes around the site. Here are our 5 different QR codes for each of our 5 different art assets. Before I go into the overall design that we have for the application right now, I want to review the functional requirements because they are what drive the designs. Our first is to illustrate the strategic importance of Fort Meigs, which mainly focuses around illustrating that it was important for the defense in depth. In order to do this, we need to show the location of Fort Arnold, the location of the Great Chain, the avenue of approach that the British would have taken from the south to the north, the system of forts within West Point, which is about 40 other forts, and the purpose of the fort. We also need to enhance the user's learning experience. We do this by creating a feeling of connectedness to Colonel Meigs. The most important aspect out of all of these is that he was well respected by his soldiers. Finally, we need to enhance the user's learning experience by creating a feeling of connectedness to his soldiers. We're going to do this by showing their living conditions and their low supplies, as well as the fact that there were African American troops present in the unit. Finally, we want to bring the users back to 1778. In order to do this, the 2 most important things we must do are show the wooden wall, and the users can see the main access road to the Hudson. Here's the overall design for our app. It's going to start with this initial screen. The purpose of this opening image is for the application to load. It allows for the application to load while not just displaying a blank screen to the users. The actions that the users can take during the screen is nothing, as they have to wait for the application to finish loading before it will proceed to the next screen. The next screen that the application will proceed to is a tutorial screen. This screen will appear only if this is the first time the users have opened the app after it's downloaded. This screen will help the users understand how to interact with the app better so that their experience is more enjoyable. On the screen, the user can scroll the screen up and down and read the full tutorial. Once the user is finished reading, they can press Next at the bottom right of the screen in order to proceed. This screen is meant for the users to scan QR codes with. As you can see indicated by the music notes at the top of the screen, music will be played when the user is on the screen. During this time, the user can access other art assets that can be used at any time by touching and placing them by clicking on the icon on the bottom left screen. Additionally, the user can go to the VR map from the screen. They can do this by clicking on the icon on the bottom right of the screen. Once a user has scanned a QR code, on the next screen, the brackets indicating where a QR code should be placed will light up green. Additionally, the middle icon will light up in comparison to the other picture, so the user knows that they can now click on it and move into the AR world. Once the user has moved into the AR world, they will be able to view their AR assets. This screen will also show the locations of Fort Arnold and the Great Chain at all times. From the screen, the user can read more about the image that they are seeing. They can do this by clicking on the icon in the bottom left. They can also take a picture of the image that they are seeing. They can do this by clicking on the camera icon in the bottom right. Finally, if they wish to return to the previous screen in order to scan another QR code, they can click on the arrow in the top left. The functional requirements that we achieve with this screen are showing the location of Fort Arnold, the location of the Great Chain, showing the wooden wall that would have been present, and we can also use this screen to show a cannon that would have been used by the soldiers and how it functioned. The purpose of this screen is for users who would like to learn more about the image that they are seeing. From this screen, the user can scroll up and down to read the entire text. The other option the user can take is to click the arrow and return to viewing the art assets. The functional requirements that we can achieve using this screen is to tell the story of why they built Fort Meigs. Also to show why Colonel Meigs was well respected by his soldiers and why he returned to the fort. We can also talk about the African American soldiers who were in the unit and how the soldiers lived in poor conditions. The user can return to the previous screen by clicking the back arrow and once again to the previous screen. Now we are back at the screen meant for users to scan QR codes with. From this screen, as already mentioned, the user can access other art assets by clicking on the bottom left icon. Once they click on the bottom left icon, they will be presented with a menu. From this menu, they can choose different art assets, which will be represented by the actual image of the art asset instead of just icons as it is in this moment. The functional requirements that we can achieve using this screen is to show the soldiers' uniforms, Colonel Meigs' uniform, and also the musket. Once the user selects an art asset, they will proceed to the next screen where they can touch an area on the screen and the art asset will be placed. From the screen, the user can touch an area on the screen in order to place their image. Similar to the other AR world, the user can choose to read more about the image they are seeing or take a picture of their screen. Additionally, the location of Fort Arnold and the Great Chain will be displayed on the screen at all times. The functional requirements that we can achieve using this type of screen is to show the soldiers' uniforms, Colonel Meigs' uniform and his awards, show the musket and its functionality, show Colonel Meigs was well respected and decorated, and show that the soldiers lived in relatively poor conditions and were ill supplied.
For the future, so at the moment, we have completed Sprint 2 and the PDR. Our next big event is Sprint 3, along with the Critical Design Review next semester.
I'm now going to go over some of the major changes that have been made to the app since our last sprint. The first is that we added an app logo. As you can see, we have added the AR Fortress logo to the app that now shows up on the iPad. We've also added a home screen for the user to start, just to present kind of a nice looking starting screen. Just simply hit start. Once again, we scan. The next major change that we have added is sound. So this is a proof of concept, so when I hit spawn world after scanning a 1 in, it is going to start playing and show off that we have added to the features the points that arrive around the user. So there's the Great Chain. These are again just proof of concept, not actual distances or locations. The next thing I'm going to show is that the compass actually works. So I'm going to once again scan the QR code and now face the iPad this way and prove that the Great Chain once again gets redirected to behind us, Fort Willis and the Great Chain, and that proves that it is actually using the compass to direct where that dot is.
Beginning next semester, I will begin figuring out how to segue automatically upon scanning and working more on the maps and icons shown in the previous ideas.
I will continue to develop the storyboard and overall design for the app. Also, I'm going to get in contact with the museum to see how plausible it is for us to get our QR codes on their signage.
I will begin recording dialogues and start making texts for the closed captioning.
I'll continue learning Swift and continue working on music and voiceover incorporation into the app.
I will continue to refine the design for the app and keep group members on task and focused, and continue to refine the historical aspect of the app.